shines through you when you leave me room.
Sagittarius, control of thought and speech leading to truth. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's virtue practice. Each month, we are taking a saint that we have some relationship to, and Andrew White and I are just having our conversation about that, hoping that you too can find someone to have a conversation about why a particular saint may affect you or speak deeply to you, and what it might be that it resonates in your soul. Now, we're working with the virtues practice, and we've been putting certain saints with certain virtues because it has a connection with how they resonate with us, or at least one of us. And in that way, there's been a decision, at least on my part, I must say this, because I'm more connected to this saint, to put Saint Columba here with Sagittarius. Now, some of you may know of Saint Columba, but I will tell you a little of this story because I think in many ways, this story of Saint Columba is what affected me so deeply. And then I spent some time following that journey on foot to live into what it must have been like at that time. So St. Columba is also named Columcille, or Columcille. I'm sure I'm not doing the right thing by the Irish language, which means the dove of the church. That image of the dove, the Holy Spirit, that's quite a title to carry. But there are also stories that make you consider, well, who was this individual? Now, you can read different stories and different legends from saints, and it's the legend that really speaks to me that I want to talk about. And that was the beginning of his journey, one of the 12 apostles of Ireland, perhaps one that could be understood as having a lot of capacities. I remember working a long time ago with a Japanese shaman who spoke of how different shamans of the past had different magics associated to them. And she took me to this place of a particular woman that she had, in many ways honored for many years, but also was someone that she, like a saint, had this affinity to. This woman had been slayed many, many centuries before, but she spoke about this shaman as having the power of 20 magics, meaning that they were able to enter into different capacities. I like that word, consider magic to be a capacity. So in the relationship to Columba, we hear that he has incredibly varied capacities. One of those capacities we hear, it was to be able to tame the water monster, and that is what impressed the Picts of Scotland and helped them to convert to the stream of Christian impulse that was coming from the Irish. So the story I want to begin with, although I've started, of course, jumping in, is of the origins of him leaving Ireland. So apparently, and this is something that I think is very interesting because there's a kind of signature to something of his nature, that he was given a very ancient text of the Bible. And in those days, no one was allowed to read the Bible except for the monks or the priests, the high priests, and the priests that were initiated into that particular stream got to read the text. But he had this feeling that more people needed to be able to see this. And so he had copied out, as it was the traditions of those days, to write your own Bible out by hand. He had copied out his own version of this before giving it back. And this is what caused his big first feud in Ireland. And he was a big battle took place, and he was then banished as a part of his decision not to follow the rule that was handed down. And that becomes something of the nature, I think, of him, because the other strong picture that I carry was the at the time the Roman church was trying to bring about a particular ways of being with Christianity. And the Celtic Christianity was incredibly individual in the sense that every parish was quite unique. You could have monks that would be able to leave and have a family, then come back and still work with a congregation. The congregations worked incredibly uniquely according to the parish, according to the community. And that was really quite a living way of each individual. And that's why I think we get to know some of these saints, particularly of Ireland, because they really individualized in that sense their relationship to this Christ impulse, and it lived in and through their community in a unique way. And Columba had already been banished because of his stance on allowing people to have access to this perhaps more truthful text of the Bible. And he was then called, because of his the attention that he received, because of these various magics. People would come from far and wide to Iona, the island in Scotland where he set up his school and his parish. And people came to him for all sorts of reasons because of his varying capacities. They say he had a capacity for prophecy. So he would often see ahead, and people would come when they had questions of the future. He also had the capacity for healing. So people would come for those sorts of things, and capacity to help negotiate and mediate. And then, of course, capacity to deal with dragons, or at least water dragons, which, as we know, has an esoteric symbol behind that ability to change a fear structure that has taken hold of a community. So he had all of these capacities, and people came from far wide. So he was called upon to gather at this synod in Whitby, where the Roman Church came with their agenda. And their agenda was, that everything had to be conformed. There had to be conformity, and they needed to also out the Jewish calendar. And they wanted to pass this on to everybody. St. Columba had a confidant or a mentor that was known as the hermit monk, or Morales, which is little light. And little light was not in the forefront. It wasn't, people come from far and wide to see him, but he was helping to school and guide Columba in his journey. He also has, there is some evidence of his well in Holy Island, which is close to Iona. It's not easy to get to, but there is lots of connections of saints that have connected to Iona and the surrounding area. So Morales basically said, once the synod had occurred, to basically said, I don't know using those words, but as an image, he said, we don't join them, but we don't fight them. Which is quite interesting when you can imagine that Columba, who was very connected to the potency of what Christianity could do for people's lives, and he wanted to bring in this so that people could have access to the much deeper esoteric wisdom. And this esoteric wisdom was being blocked or controlled by Rome.
Saved by the few, for the few.
Exactly. So he took this advice of Morales, which said, don't join them, but don't fight them. And that's when the story goes, he returns to Iona and writes the Book of Kells. Now, this is something that I think is, I know I'm going on about this, but this is, as you can hear, these stories really touch me deeply, because in the pictures that given by Rudolf Steiner, in the picture form of which these monks then dedicated their lives to, and it took a long time to write this book because it's such an artistry. It's many of the pictures there are, they're made from minerals that would actually poison the priests that were working on it. But their dedication to dedicate their entire life to this artistic version, not for beauty's sake of how we understand that today, but because in the scribing in this way, these words would be inscribed into the higher astral plane, making them available for anyone to be able to access. And that was a very deeply esoteric task. We know from what Stein talked about the apocalyptic pictures that St. John was able to access. He says these pictures are alive in this higher astral plane, and St. John was able to access and bring them into a level of communicating with others. But the reverse is also true, that one can take something and bring it into life, into the astral plane by what one dedicates to it. And that was part of their work, not to join the Roman Church's ways, not to fight them, but to double down on their esotericism, to create what they were holding and try to make it alive for generations to come. And I think it may be why Iona is such a special place still in the world. Many people journey there and feel that not only is it one of the thin places where the veils between the realms of consciousness are thinner, but actually there is something there that's quite special. And it continues to be a place of pilgrimage, but it is this, I think this work that went on there that significantly keeps the bridge open between the heavens and the earth, shall we say. So, I know I'm speaking a lot about this because it touched me so deeply, not just the story of his willingness to sort of share what he was given so that it could help others' lives, but he's also willingness to make this stand. And the Roman church was very different from the Celtic Christian stream, and we see that profound weight of shift in power and how that then evolved after then. But it doesn't mean to say these esoteric Christians that were working at that time do not still have a a gift for us in our times. Yeah, so I know that you haven't got the same relationship to St. Columba as I have, although you have spent some time in the areas. But when
Yeah.
I think about I feel like I could rattle on. I won't continue to tell you everything that speaks to me. But what I would say that I've put him here in Sagittarius because of his relationship to truth. And truth is not, I've got the answer, I know it and you don't know it. It's not in the realm of what I would call light or information, where we have some knowledge. It's really in the realm of truth that we esoterically is sought after by anyone in those traditions. Truth, strength, and beauty as architecture for the life that we live. Not I've got the truth, but I am a seeker of that. And how that affects actually the virtues that we carry and the life we live. So I felt that he belonged in this place because his desire for the truth, not to be held as knowledge by, as you say, a chosen few, but to be brought to the many. And I think he still does that today.
I think what he also exemplifies is in the face of a force or a construct of power, which is obviously trying to control the way people relate to the message of Christ, that he was steadfast in his truth because he knew it was right, and obviously it was very clever in the synod to agree with them but not bend to their way, so not to fight with them, but in order to create that information. I mean, that's a fantastic thing to know that the truth, that this message must reach people, and the common man must be able to access that same information, and this power trying to stop that. So that really is inspirational, and of course he was highly effective and well loved. I think that you get the sense that the people trying to control, there's massive ego in that, whereas a personality like Columba, there was a certain space within him that his message was not just one of words, but could be felt around him, and that's what people responded to as well.
Yeah. And I think in a certain sense, we might say that all saints are seekers of the truth. But I think he had that virtue. And that's something that really struck me with him. And yet we're all, in a certain way, you and I and everyone that is on this path is seeking the truth. And we know that we don't mean information. And yet that very word, even though it's a virtue, has become something that in itself is corrupted. And particularly over the last 20 years, we might say, we really consider more truth as being who's got the right information, or the information that's the most acceptable, or whatever it is. It's no longer what it used to be. Truth was not about information. It was about a harmonic resonance with the realities of the spiritual world. And that is something that all of these so-called people that say they have the right answer are not necessarily carrying. And yet we can hear that there are those that were willing to go to hold and bear that flame of truth, because it is so essential as a part of our way of life. Do we live in resonance with the spiritual world? And that's actually how these virtues, or these magics, as it can be sometimes be put, these capacities come to us, not because we seek capacity to have power over, or seek capacity so that we are, as you've put it, more of an ego being in the world, but actually capacities come because we are working with that harmonic resonance. And I'm using those words because it's hard to speak about what that means when we are using language, because it's knowing that you're as you use that word steadfast, but your life is in tune with something which is also your spiritual ideal, and that it's somehow resonant with it.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I was just completely with what you were saying. I was just enjoying it. So, yeah, I think the saints in general, but especially the Celtic saints, which I love, it's the evoking of the inner world that they held that is the attraction for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And as you said, why Iona may be that special, because they, in a way, you could say, release the perfume of truth in the air, and it lingers. And that's why when we go around all those places, Lindisfarne, um, all those special places um, in the north, that, yeah, um, that there's this undoubtable presence that you feel, and um, and for me, the reason is because the history of the bearers of the flame of truth
That's
that have walked.
yeah.
Mhm.
I would. So I part of the research that I'm connected with is how does our participation in that affect that today? We can have sort of this sort of spiritual tourism, which I'm using that word not to be negative, but to say that some people go to just walk on those lands and get a sense of the past, and others take a kind of reverence with them to those places. But more and more, I think that how we participate affects whether these sacred sites or sacred places continue to be active. And I think
Think
I think some of them are closed, and yet they can be opened by our participation. But Iona is one of those that most people, I can't imagine anyone not going there and thinking this is a closed doorway now. it seems to be forever opened, and there is something there in the community that sustains and continues that. It's really quite an extraordinary place. But it began, I think, not because of that, just because of that land, because obviously the door may have been available, as it is in many parts of Ireland and Scotland and Wales, but rather the work, the initiation work that took place there really has created a solid bridge for people to experience a door.
I think that, you use the word participation, and I think really how one participates is just by being open and vulnerable in those spaces to what is there.
Well, absolutely, I think that's essential, and we bring ourselves there. So yeah, open and vulnerable to what is there is really important.
But I don't also, I mean, you mentioned the word spiritual tourism. To me, I don't think it, you might go somewhere just to have a look, but something profound can happen to you, and you went for one reason and you leave, with your life sort of changed. I mean, you never know, and I firmly believe that wherever a saint has walked, that it is hallowed ground, and that being in that environment is even just the desire to be in that environment starts opening doors within. And I think that's the whole point of pilgrimage, really. It's it's not just a journey on land, it's a journey within.
Yeah, I do certainly. I think what I was thinking of was my time in Patmos, where these cruisers would turn up and 400 people would walk to the church. Then they
Oh,
were
yeah.
literally couldn't even sit down because they didn't have chance because the next, and it was people from all sorts of faiths, but they just wanted to be at Patmos where the apocalypse had been written. It wasn't, in many cases, a pilgrimage. On occasion, you felt that there was a group of people that were coming out of that place, and it was a very significant. But for others, it was part of on the cruise liner stopping tour. We're going to do a few of the.
Right.
And so
But
I think
even
that's the
so,
part that, yeah, I agree with you, actually. Even so, that was possible. Yeah, I think that's good. And that's a very important thing to remember. We don't know what's going to open someone
you
up.
don't know, you can't say anything about anybody else's journey or the reason why they're in a certain place at a certain time. And that's the mystery, for me of God and his saints is, um, you know, everybody is connected in some way and everybody's journey is different. But in those places, and I do believe starting off going, okay, I'm going here because I want to open myself up to what is there. And even your first part of the journey, even if it's in another country, it's because that is your focus, things start happening in your life. Like certain people will come into your life, like, well, you walk past a beggar who smiles in a certain way, and there's just the magic and the mystery begins. And you know, that's why I think it's great that, and I love listening to you talk about the saints because um they're not just historical figures. Um, they're PowerPoints of divine energy that still linger on this plane. And I think that it's important Well, it's fantastic, but for me, I love it's important to spend some time in those types of places,
Yeah.
um, to receive what is there.
Yes. And as I mentioned, absolutely that is the way. And uh, we are also participating in that when we're there. So to take that into our consciousness, that we're a part of that future bridge, depending on how we go to a place. And yeah, I mean, I would say in Iona it is so well held that it would be hard for that to be closed by people. But I think in other places, so like when Stonehenge is being used as the rock the ground for 4 days of music, does it have an impact on the etheric life there that then affects people at other times? Yeah, and at the same time, some of these centers are so potent that they can manage all of that and still stay awake, alive, and available to all of us.
Yes.
So thanks once again for this conversation. But we're
Thank you.
gonna you have a piece of music. I think it's an instrumental this time.
Yeah.
And let's listen to that and let's follow this through. And the intention of our conversations is to engage you in your conversations as well. And yeah, thank you. we let that Saint Columba's instrumental go into the emptiness, and then we enter into our heart with the virtue that we are working with, and we build a feeling experience of that. That feeling experience will move the heart, and at the same time we turn that feeling into a stream that moves from the heart into the hands, and then a stream from the heart down into the feet, then a stream from the feet into the head. And then we return to the heart.